From the PEP Radio Newsroom, this is the evening news for September 4th, 2025, and these are the stories we are covering at this hour. Former CDC Director Susan Monarez has spoken out after being fired from the CDC. The longtime government scientist who ran afoul of Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. penned a Wall Street Journal op-ed published Thursday in which she raises concerns about the way ahead for the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention following her ouster. Public health shouldn't be partisan. Vaccines have saved millions of lives under administrations of both parties, Monarez writes. I was fired for holding that line. But the line doesn't disappear with me. It runs through every parent deciding whether to vaccinate a child, every physician counseling patients, and every American who demands accountability. Kennedy claims, however, that people at the CDC did not do their job. Speaking on recent firings at the CDC, Kennedy called attention to a concern he often talks about, the chronic disease epidemic. That's why we have to fire people at the CDC, he said. They did not do their job. He accused the recently ousted director, Susan Monarez, of lying in that Wall Street Journal op-ed that was published today, when she said she was pressured to pre-approve the recommendations of his vaccine advisory panel. Meanwhile, Senator Ron Wyden and Robert F. Kennedy have gone into overtime. Senator Wyden's questioning of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. went over the Democrats' allotted time and had to be gavelled out by the panel's chairman. Wyden and Kennedy got into a heated exchange after the senator said the secretary stacked the deck of a vaccines committee, replacing scientists with vaccine skeptics and conspiracy theorists. Kennedy said his actions got rid of the conflicts of interests he said had pervaded such panels. Kennedy also said he had support from scientists and doctors all over the country. Many of the nation's leading public health and medical societies, including the American Medical Association, American Public Health Association, and the American Academy of Pediatrics, have decried Kennedy's policies and warned they'll drive up rates of vaccine-preventable diseases. Kennedy has defended his decision on rural health care in hospitals and the effects that will come from Republican signature tax laws. Here's the facts. These institutions are not just delivering health access to rural Americans, economic centers, or cultural centers. Those communities are often the largest employer, Kennedy told Senator Mike Crapo. The Health and Human Services Secretary responded that as a result of the Republicans' signature tax and spending law, we're infusing more than 50% increase in the amount of money that is going to rural communities, calling it a significant investment. Crapo contended the bill increased funding for rural hospitals, but does it? No. Roughly 10 million people will lose health insurance from this legislation. The facts are far more complicated than either of those two think. Nonpartisan estimates say roughly 10 million people are expected to lose health insurance from the legislation, most of whom will lose it through Medicaid. That will leave many hospitals with patients who can't afford to pay for emergency services. The changes are expected to disproportionately impact rural areas where as many as 1 in 4 Americans rely on Medicaid to pay for health insurance, particularly hard. D.C. lawsuit challenges Trump's National Guard deployment. The District of Columbia on Thursday sued to stop President Donald Trump's deployment of National Guard troops during his lawful law enforcement intervention in Washington, with the city's top legal officials saying the surge of troops amounts to a forced military occupation. Brian Schwab, the district's elected attorney general, said in the federal lawsuit that the deployment, which now involves more than 1,000 troops, is an illegal use of the military for domestic law enforcement. No American jurisdiction should be involuntarily subjected to military occupation, Schwab wrote. However, that didn't stop the White House. Nope, the Republican president has already said he plans to send the National Guard into Chicago and Baltimore, and as we reported earlier today, New Orleans, despite staunch opposition in those Democrat-led cities. And the White House said deploying the Guard to protect federal assets and assist law enforcement is within Trump's authority as president. This lawsuit is nothing more than another attempt at the detriment of D.C. residents and visitors to undermine the president's highly successful operations to stop violent crime in D.C., spokeswoman Abigail Jackson said. That's the news at this hour. If you are watching our news videos on YouTube, be sure to subscribe to our channel. You can find PEP Radio on the PEP Radio page at paequality.com, the Live 365 app, Roku, and Alexa. Up next, we have the Meadville area weather forecast here on PEP Radio.